Okay, so Pi News episode 71, and for this I'm using my Pi 400. So Micro Center in the US did a interview with Eben, the creator and CEO of Raspberry Pi, and they went around what looks like one of the Raspberry Pi stores, I would imagine, looking at the pictures. In the interview, Eben mentions about the Pi Foundation being about 15 years old now, talks about the strength of the hobbyist market, and also talks about 60 to 70% of all sales of Raspberry Pi at the moment are industrial, and this is a decision to support the companies that kind of started off with the Raspberry Pi. I know a lot of people don't like it, but unfortunately it is the way it is at the moment. And there's some very strange somber music throughout the video, some sort of orchestral music, which is quite distracting, but it kind of fits with the news that it looks like it'll be a year before the Raspberry Pi supply situation will be sorted out as a result of COVID. So yeah, we've got quite a long wait, longer than I thought, but we will start to get Pis before then. This is when it's all sorted out in a year's time. Talks about the Pi 400 and its popularity, and also how they've supplied a lot of Pi 400s to kids who really can't afford computers, to get computers in the hands of people who really don't have enough money to have them. And obviously that's a good thing. Pi 400 also, stock availability is still pretty good, and I'm on a Pi 400 at the moment, and I really like Pi 400s. And also talks about the Raspberry Pi being the third most popular personal computing platform, just behind PC and Mac, which is quite impressive really. But I'll put a link to the interview in the description. It's worth watching. Let me know what you think about the orchestral music in the background. Now, as availability is so bad and it's near Christmas, and I realise that a lot of people will want a single board computer to buy, I started having a look at what other things there are around, and I saw this video from Explaining Computers recently on the VIM1S, and actually I thought, for running an operating system and basic retro gaming, which is a lot of the things I cover, I thought it looked very interesting, and availability seems to be pretty decent. So the VIM1 is $51.99, but the VIM1S that I've got coming, and I'll be doing some videos on, will be $59.99, and yeah, looks like pretty decent spec. I've covered some much more expensive single board computers, but I really wanted as near to a budget one as I could find, but with still decent specs. And yeah, I'll be having a look at that in the future. Obviously it's not going to have the support that the Raspberry Pi has, which is, I mean, so many different operating systems and so many different things. But if you want the option of just being able to play around with a single board computer, do a bit of retro gaming, try a bit of Linux on it, this might be a good option. Next up, the Ventura problem from the Raspberry Pi Foundation. So they had some issues with updated MacBooks. So if you have a Raspberry Pi Pico, you need another device to be able to write to it. Obviously you can use a Raspberry Pi for that, or a Windows device. So this is what they say if you've got a Mac. Right now, if you're using a Pico with your Mac, we don't recommend upgrading to Ventura, at least not yet. If you try to write files to it, it will come up with an error. So they're investigating it, and have a look at the thread if this affects you, and there is a workaround in the story here. Next up, from Raspberry Pi and DIY project, just the image really was so cool. So this is a portable arcade machine, and looking at it, for some reason in my head that's about the size of a Nintendo DS, but actually when you look at it in more depth, so there are some pictures of what's inside here. And I was trying to work out, it's too square to be a Pi 3 or a Pi 4. SD card slot, would you reckon something like a 3A plus maybe inside that? It looks very similar to that sort of size. And I also found in the story there was a link to Unbox Therapy has done a video on it. And this shows how, well, you can see from the thumbnail how big it is. It is actually quite a decent sized device. You can see this is from 3 years ago. A portable arcade for the super wealthy. Well, if Unbox Therapy is saying for the super wealthy, it's not going to be cheap, because he covers quite a few really sort of premium bits of kit. So let's have a look. Yeah, it looks really nice. Obviously I can't play the video. That huge control knob, really nice big buttons on there as well. I'll link this video as well in the description, and also I'll link that Instagram as well, because there's some really nice kit in there, if you can afford it. Next up, another operating system to try if you've got a Pi 4 or Pi 400. So Carson from Just Plain Tech sent me a link to this operating system. I keep meaning to try it, and I've just not got around to being able to do it yet. But if we have a look at the screenshot, It's looking very nice as an operating system, and he's saying he's optimized it for the Raspberry Pi. So check that out and let me know in the comments what you think about it. Hackaday featured this camera. Pieca is a Pi camera with some very nice lenses. So if we scroll down through, you can see it looks very cool. You've got access to all the ports here. Pieca is an interesting departure because it takes the Pi HQ camera into new territory by using Leica rangefinder lenses. Produces photographs with a distinctive feel. There is a video, so I won't click on that because I'll be showing you the results, and it's probably worth watching the video yourself if you're interested in cameras on the Raspberry Pi. Next up from Hackster.io, really like this one. This Raspberry Pi 400 powered dual screen arcade cabinet. Now, it's really nice to see a Raspberry Pi 400 used in this sort of project, and obviously because we can't get Pi 4s and Compute Module 4s are even harder to get hold of. You can see the sheer size of it by this controller here, so it is pretty big. And there's a video on how it's made, which is really nice to see. And it'd be interesting to see what games they're using on it that are dual screen games that are linked up. I can't see whether, well, it looks like the Pi 400 is outside of the casing in that instance. And I don't know if there's a way of seeing when it goes into the casing. You can see it's using Retropie. But I won't show any more of the video, but it's worth looking at. Links in the description. RaspberryPi.com did a story on this. Automatically spot printing mistakes. So it uses a Raspberry Pi 4 Model B and a 5 megapixel camera. And it uses machine learning, a newer object detection model which works faster than others to discern how many objects are in the frame, not just the size of those objects. And there's even a project page if you want to build your own one and maybe adapt it to something you need it to do. This came up on Facebook, and I don't know really. I mean, obviously, I'll put a link in the description, but I don't know the company. I don't know if it's all legitimate and everything. But back at the time when I bookmarked this, they were in stock, and they still seem to be in stock. And as you can see here, prices range from 75 to 140. So if we just click on 2 gig and 8 gig storage. And it looks like you have to click on wireless. Yeah, so 2 gig with 8 gig of storage is £75. If we go up to 4 gig, it jumps to 125. And you can basically play around with it. 2 gig with 16 gig storage for 85 and so on. As I say, I don't know the retailer, but they do look like they're in stock. It actually comes up with numbers. It has been on here for a while. Hopefully this helps, and let me know in the comments if you managed to get one. And speaking of the Compute Module 4, I scalped the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 and reached 2.5 gigahertz. So you can see here this has been delidded, looks nice and neat. I guess the Compute Module 4 is under here somewhere, and there's obviously something being sprayed on here to keep it cool. So you're capped at 2.5 gigahertz because the ARM cores are driven by PLLB and its maximum frequency is 2.5 gigahertz with stock firmware. The PLL actually runs at 5 gigahertz, but the firmware sets an advisor for stability. Highest overclock so far is 3 gigahertz, but that needed extreme cooling. Raspberry Pi and DIY projects on Facebook. Anyone know the specifications for hardware used to build this setup? I want to build one. And you can see here it's a very long display, Raspberry Pi 4 and a very interesting looking keyboard. All sorts going on there. There's a Pico here as well, or something like a Pico. 8.8 inch display, perfect for Cyberdecks. And there's a Reddit thread here, it looks like. So it's a pocket type keyboard by mechboards.co.uk. And a laptop now, so watching max headroom on my Pi top, and have a look at this image. It's like a Perspex cover. You can see there's a keyboard in there, Raspberry Pi in here, and yeah, we've got some hinges at the back. So it does look like a laptop, but it doesn't look like many other laptops. Always nice to see something like this, a different take on things. It's a Perix Periboard 505 Plus keyboard. Oh, and it's got a trackpad in it as well, somewhere. Oh yeah, at the top, like a trackball it looks like. Very unusual. From Notebook Check, this is a weird looking piece of kit. Clockwork has released the uConsole, a compact PC that utilises the Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 Lite. Can be ordered now from $139, which also includes a small display and a backlit keyboard. It won't come with a Compute Module 4 for that price. It does work with other boards as well. I think I've covered other variations of this in previous episodes, but yeah, it's really cool looking with that really industrial looking stand as well. And this, several people mentioned this to me. Oh, it's had 4.8 million views, crikey. It is a 1970s tank simulator, but it uses a Raspberry Pi. And it's got like a model, you can see here that it's inside this structure. Worth looking at if you're interested in this sort of thing. All this super old kit, look at all the buttons and all the CRT display and everything. But there is a Pi in there somewhere, which is driving a lot of this. It gets inside the tank, and look, it takes a camera around this model. It's a really cool video, definitely worth watching. So from Tom's Hardware, now you can enjoy your favourite retro media in a form factor you love. This creator has made an operating system that looks like an old style VHS menu. And I used to sell VHS video recorders that had this style of menu back in the day, and it's really nice to see. It's a really different project, and yeah, it's very cool. If you have a look at the video, again, I can't play it, but I'll link it in the description. But yeah, this sort of menu really brings me back, and you can see there's some Bob Ross video they're playing there. Oh, and looks like, I just saw Dreamcast mentioned there, looks like there's some retro gaming in there as well. Another one from Tom's Hardware, DIY Raspberry Pi Laptop 2 laptop kit is coming soon. And the picture's really interesting, but you can't kind of work out, I don't really know what it is. It looks like there's maybe a Pi in the middle, so that would make it pretty small, but I'm not quite sure where the display is, and it's really hard to tell. But if you click on it, so it brings up a link to SB components, and we've got a bit of a closer look at it. Still can't really properly see what's going on. So it's a 7-inch display, touchscreen, detachable keyboard, official camera, it has speakers, uninterruptible power supply, but they're not really revealing proper images of it. I did try this earlier on to put my details in, but it didn't seem to, yeah, it doesn't recognize any of my email addresses. I don't know quite why that is, but yeah, I'll keep an eye on that. If someone sees that or gets any more information on it, let me know. So you can use older Raspberry Pis, like you can use a Pi 3B, Raspberry Pi Zero, compute module compatibility should be possible. And here's another Cyberdeck on Reddit. So we've got our controller in here, we've got a Pi 4 with what looks like a low profile ice tower cooler. It mostly started as maybe a Cyberdeck, but I don't have a 3D printer or skills. So I settled on just having a way to carry around all the items I need to game essentially anywhere. Unfortunately, I have to assemble all of the components together every time. Okay, so I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.